Hi, thanks for coming to my talk. I am going to be reporting some of the outcomes from the ADVANCEGeo Partnership. This has been an ongoing collaboration for the last 4 years between myself and several other members of the geoscience community, Asmaret Barhi, Meredith Hastings, Blair Schneider, Erica Marin-Spiota, and Billy Williams. In addition, we have several social scientists who are helping us think about how to analyze our data, as well as giving us information as to how to present our educational and workshop products. So that would be Vicki Magley, Allison Matthias, and Christine Bell. And this is really a team effort, and I can't say enough about this really great group of humans that I've gotten to work with over the last few years. So before I continue, I would like to acknowledge that I live in Colorado Springs, which is the original homelands of the indigenous people of the Ute Tribal Nation. I acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and honor and respect the many diverse indigenous people still connected to this land on which I live, learn, and work. And I think this is particularly important when we're thinking about how to make our spaces in science more equitable, as Native Americans are the least represented amongst all STEM disciplines, often making up less than 0.5% of those receiving PhDs. In addition, Native American women are among the groups that have the highest rates of sexual assault and harassment. And so it's particularly important to consider them when we are doing this work. And as I'm guessing many of you know, gender equity efforts have really failed people of color. So this data is from 2017, and it really shows the STEM workforce, which does not reflect the workforce of the United States in general. And this is all US-based data, I should say. In addition, biology, women make about around 60% of students, yet they are not making it into the professorial ranks. In addition, what's even more unfortunate is that only 1% of ecology, evolutionary biology PhD student graduates in the US are Black, and less than 0.5% of these PhD students are Native American or Alaskan Native identifying. And many of these statistics are really because the spaces that we exist go well beyond bias, and they're actually hostile to women, white women, and people of color. 76% of PhD students experience gender harassment or racial discrimination. And I should point out that men also experience gender harassment. This is not a women's only issue. Greater than 50% of women geoscientists have been sexually harassed within their workspace. 71% of women doing field work experience inappropriate comments, and 26% experience assault in a survey of archaeologists. 40% of women of color and versus 27% of white women felt unsafe because of their gender during professional activities. And 28% of these women of color felt unsafe because of their race. 57% of disabled geoscientists, or those who have a disability, experienced insulting remarks. And 30 to 50% of geoscientists, and this is very broadly construed to include ecologists, earth and environmental scientists, have considered leaving the discipline. And when we, the ADVANCEGeo Partnership, set out a survey to geoscientists from the American Geophysical Union, the Society for Soil Science, in addition to the Earth Science Women's Network, and several other societies. We've done similar work with the Ecological Society of America, but we don't have that data processed yet. But so far, it looks like it reflects about the same trends. And we see that 31% of our respondents never or rarely had access to a mentor. 12% of our respondents rarely or never received feedback or adequate instruction or support. Between 1/3 and 40% of our respondents experienced insulting remarks, devaluation of their work, or bullying. And it's important to note that gender harassment was the most common form of sexual harassment reported in our study. And these exclusionary behaviors can take on many forms. Here are 3 quotes from REU students who, the quotes have been anonymized so they cannot be identified, but this goes well beyond race and gender, right? It also has to do with feeling like an outsider because of your race or your age or your experience. One student said only older scientists are seen as experts. Another one said, being the only, at least visually, person of color in my group, the youngest, and on my first field season made it harder for me to interact with my white workmates as I felt very intimidated and out-educated. And these actions, right, they may seem minor, but they have been shown by psychologists to be just as damaging as the larger acts of assault and her like things that would be more identifiable as hostile behavior. And it's important to once again note that these hostilities have a disproportionate impact on those with intersectional identities. So 50% of Black women in our survey and 50% of white non-binary respondents have considered leaving the geosciences because of this hostility. And I really hope that this data shows you that we really cannot think about STEM as a pipeline. The loss of folks from STEM is not passive. Right? This is not a supply problem. We can't jam more people through the pipe in order to get more people out. And that's because it's not a leaky pipeline, and rather it is a vicious obstacle course where women and people of color are marginalized in all sorts of ways, from the job application process to getting access to research facilities to awards and speaking invitations. And most recently, it has been well documented that COVID-19 has had an outsized effect on working moms compared to those of the rest of us in STEM. So why is this so prevalent? We're not horrible people. Why is this so prevalent in the earth and environmental sciences? Well, in many ways, it's just because of the structure. So we have this master apprenticeship model that really creates a strong power imbalance. We have an archaic, gendered, and racialized hierarchy. We have a space where the celebrity researcher who gets the big grant or the fancy paper is sometimes, right, people look the other way. Oh, well, you know how they are, and their behavior is excused. The reality is that Western science has historical legacies of exclusion because of its colonial background. And we also need to think about the exclusionary practices within fieldwork for women, gender minorities, LGBTQ folks, and people who are just simply not familiar with camping or rowing a boat. And so the ADVANCEGeo Partnership, we came together to really address this problem by thinking about the problem of underrepresentation and inequity as a function of social injustice and oppression. So this is a systematic problem. This is not something we can solve by examining individual actions and identities. And we do this by taking an intersectional approach. We use a feminist ethics of care, and we're really focused on this idea of responsible conduct of research. And so this includes our community-based intervention. So these are our bystander intervention workshops where we think about how can we all be responsible for making the space that we work more welcoming to all, using social responsibility in this way and leading to greater accountability within the community in a myriad of ways, from agencies, funding agencies, societies, etc. And we really need our leadership to step up and be at the forefront of these discussions. And in many ways over the last year, this has really been accelerated due to the racial unrest, in particular in the United States. And we've had a lot of partnerships that have formed. And this is really great because we can educate each other while also trying to change the system. And this is why it's really important to try to change the culture at all levels, both by giving yourself individual empowerment and thinking about how you can make something right in that particular situation, but also thinking about how we can make our institutions, our departments more responsible and equitably, and treating everyone equitably and just. So our big educational program goal is this community engagement. And a lot of this is really done through our bystander intervention workshops. And this is an integral part of this program. And at this point, we're approaching, I think, 75 workshops we've done. About 30 of those have been done online. And the data I'm going to show you are from pre-pandemic. We haven't crunched our assessment stuff yet from the past year. But these workshops are really tailored to their audience. And so we can provide folks with education on specific topics, like whether it's field safety, implicit bias, and microaggressions, or give our sort of standard bystander intervention workshop. And in general, folks really like our workshops. 99% of those responding to our survey said they would recommend our workshops to others. And in large part, that's because the scenarios we use when we're practicing our bystander intervention are very relevant. These scenarios came from our focus group data, which was collected from people across our field, different ages, different institutions, representing different groups. And we were able to really adapt these things to specific audiences. And I think the most exciting part is that the vast majority of folks taking our workshop have intentions to use their bystander intervention strategies in the future. So if you would like to request a workshop, you can go to our website. It's listed there, and there's a form to fill out. And we are giving workshops virtually and hopefully soon in person again. And we also have a lot of resources, including a section on field things to think about, right? Because this is really important, right before field season starts. You can look at how to create a code of conduct for your lab and things like that. And so I just really invite you to think about how can we reimagine the scientific enterprise and think about how we can prioritize people and their safety over our data.